So like if the city is like a big forest, a concrete forest, the trains and the tube and the subway, they're kind of like worms. You know? Maybe snakes. No. I think they're definitely worms. Like they clearly are. They're big city worms. So after my dinosaur deck building journey, the worms in my brain started squirming. The synergies between Magic Planter and Limit Reverse were just too much for me to ignore, and so I thought for a little while, and I decided to listen to the brain worms. I mean, these worms, they've got some good ideas. They've got some synergies, some funny plays, and I am so sorry to announce that today we are playing Worm Mill in Edison format. I apologize in advance to the Edison format community because this is the best mill deck I have ever played. It plays less floodgates than normal, not no floodgates, but less. And it has hilarious combos. It is so much fun, and it abuses some of the most powerful cards in the format and turns their downsides into pluses, introducing, for the second time on the channel, Millipede. Here is the deck list, and you know this time we are playing Shield Worm. You guys will be surprised, Shield Worm is actually the MVP. You've got all the worms. You got Needle Worm, mill 5 cards. You got Warm Worm, mill 3 when it's destroyed. And you have Shield Worm, which changes itself to defense and then mills based on the number of insects you have on your side of the field. Again, there's a lot to discuss, so let's talk about the combos and then I will break down the deck list. First of all, you want to take the Baby Ceratosaurus Limit Reverse combo from the last episode of Cursed Tech and switch out that baby for a Warm Worm. You are going to activate Limit Reverse on the Warm Worm, summon it back, activate Magic Planter, sending the Limit Reverse. You will draw 2 cards and your opponent will mill 3. And the next combo abuses the most powerful card in this deck, Inferno Reckless Summon. You want to activate Call of the Haunted on the Shield Worm, summon the Shield Worm, activate Inferno Reckless Summon. This will summon 2 more Shield Worms out of the deck. And because the Shield Worm changes itself to defense on resolution and then mills, you will then switch the first Shield Worm to defense, mill 3, and then the other 2 Shield Worms will also switch to defense and mill 6 more. That is 9 cards milled for that 2-card combo, and it gets even crazier if you have 1 more insect on your side of the field. Well, that is 12 cards milled, and if you have 2 more insects, that is 15 cards milled. 15. And now I do need to talk about the Limit Reverse Shield Worm because it was complicated and I didn't know exactly how it works, so I made sure on Master Duel. If you do the same combo but with Limit Reverse instead of Call of the Haunted, you will summon back the Shield Worm, activate Inferno Reckless Summon, summon the 2 more. The first Shield Worm will go to defense, mill 3 cards, and then blow itself up, and then the other 2 Shield Worms will go to defense and trigger, milling 2 more and 2 more. So that is going to be 7 cards milled instead of the 9, but the combo still works in a fairly similar way. Look at this beautiful deck. Are you kidding me? It's, oh my god. I wouldn't change a single card. Okay, let's talk about it. So first up, you've got your worms, Needle Worm, Warm Worm, and Shield Worm. Don't cut any of these because they are the best cards in your deck. Just kidding. That would be Morphing Jar. This card will always be the best card in a mill deck. You can reuse it with Book of Eclipse. If you draw this card in your first turn, you will probably win the game if it resolves. Next up, we have Summoner Monk and Sangan. Sangan searches all of your cards, including Morphing Jar, and Summoner Monk can discard any of these spells to summon out a Shield Worm from the deck. This is very important to trigger one of, if not the best card in this deck, Inferno Reckless Summon. This card is so powerful, and its downsides help you. When exactly one monster with 1500 or less attack is special summoned to your field while your opponent controls a face-up monster, special summon as many monsters as possible with the same name as the summoned monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard in attack position. If you use this on the Shield Worm like you saw in the combo, you can potentially mill 15 cards. And Summoner Monk is a way to special summon the Shield Worm and trigger the Inferno Reckless Summon pretty much at your control. And Inferno Reckless Summon's downside of letting your opponent summon monsters out of their deck helps your strategy. Not only does this make your opponent have more monsters on their side of the field in order to resolve a bigger Book of Eclipse, but also this just gets more monsters out of their deck. It makes their deck smaller. Same thing with Book of Eclipse. This is the best disruption in the format. I mean, a Book of Moon for 5 monsters on your opponent's side of the field is ridiculous, and especially when that can make your opponent draw 5 cards. Although it could draw them into combo pieces, drawing is exactly the same as milling a lot of the time, and yeah, Book of Eclipse is so broken in this deck, especially when you could theoretically Inferno Reckless Summon a Needleworm and then use Book of Eclipse to flip them all face down and then flip them all back up to mill. Next up, we have the Magic Planters, Upstart Goblin, and Hand Destruction. Hand Destruction is especially great because not only does it make your opponent get 2 cards deeper in their deck, but it can put the Shield Worms and any of these worms into the graveyard in order to use your Limit Reverse and your Call of the Haunted. We are only on 2 real floodgates, the Gravity Bind and the Wall of Revealing Light. These work really well with Magic Planter in a pinch, and the star card, I know I've said there's a lot of star cards, but Fiendish Chain in this deck is what this deck was missing. It is justifiable to play because of the Magic Planters. It gives you a lot more continuous traps to send, but also it stops this deck from losing to what it would have lost to. Your main problems are Brionic, Judgment Dragon, Black Rose Dragon. All of these cards are stopped by Fiendish Chain. You can stop Heavy Storm with your Dark Bribes and your Solemn, but Fiendish Chain will stop the blowout that otherwise would lose you the game on the spot. Speaking of, Dark Bribe is great because it's free. It lets your opponent draw a card, but you want them to draw cards. Also, the side deck, you can just side into whatever floodgate you need because you are playing the Magic Planters. If you draw redundant copies, you can just send them. Also, the extra deck, you don't need it. Let's get into the duels. First game with the Worm Mill deck, and we are up against Frogs. Our opening hand looks pretty interesting. I really like this Fiendish Chain, and I think you will see why in this game. We're gonna activate Upstart Goblin. We draw the best card in our deck, the Morphing Jar. We're just going to set that card and set all of our back row and pass our turn. My opponent's going to normal summon a Substitute and use priority to send it to the graveyard. They didn't say priority, but there's no reason not to, and if you Fiendish Chain it, it'll be in the grave and it won't work, so no reason to Fiendish Chain the Substitute. They'll bring out the Swap Frog, and we will decide to Fiendish Chain the Swap Frog. And I don't know if my opponent knows, but Swap Frog does return to the hand for cost, so they could have bounced this if they wanted to. Probably would have been worse for them because they would have just discarded it off of the Morphing Jar, and then they are just going to pass their turn. We draw a Hand Destruction. We're going to activate Hand Destruction. They will discard 2 cards, and we will do the same. We are then going to normal summon a Worm, set our back row, and flip Morphing Jar, and this is pretty much an unlosable game state. I mean, if you resolve Morphing Jar for 5 with 4 back row set, I mean, you are in a pretty good spot. We draw a lot of good cards, and my opponent's going to draw some cards as well. Then we activate Magic Planter, sending the Fiendish Chain. We don't need to worry about it anymore, and we're going to draw 2 cards. We're then going to Upstart Goblin, draw another card, and now the decision is just which back row to set because we simply have too many. We are then going to go into the battle phase, attack into this Swap Frog in order to mill 3 cards with this Worm. My opponent draws for turn. They are then going to normal summon a Substitute, use its effect, but that is fine with me. Please send any monsters out of your deck that you want to. But they are just going to get out another Swap Frog, send a Treeborn Frog. They're going to activate MST on our only floodgate, the Wall of Revealing Light. So we are going to Dark Bribe. They get to draw another card. I love Dark Bribe in this deck because it makes them draw. They're going to attack into our Swap Frog. Just kidding, we will activate the Wall of Revealing Light. And I found that it's always best to just call 3,000, I mean. And then we are going to draw a Fiendish Chain. They're going to Trap Dust Shoot, take our Sandgan. We are then going to activate Call of the Haunted on this Shield Worm. The Shield Worm will summon back, and we can chain Inferno Reckless Summon on the summon of Shield Worm. This will bring out 2 more Shield Worms from the deck, and they can decide if they want to bring out any more Swap Frogs. And then on Resolution, this one that I brought back first will get changed first, and then they will mill 3, and then the other 2 will happen, and they will mill 6 more. So they will mill 9 cards off of that combo. We're then going to set a back row, switch the Morphing Jar, and pass. They are going to bring back the Treeborn Frog. Normal summon a Swap Frog, send a Dupe Frog from their deck to the graveyard. I don't really know why they are doing that, but that's fine. They're going to bounce both of their cards. And then we are going to bring back this Warm Worm in the end phase, and then we can change it to defense, and the Limit Reverse will kill it, and then our opponent will mill 3 cards. We still have a Call of the Haunted left over, so we can send that with the Magic Planter, and that will let us draw 2 cards. And I think, yeah, this Shield Worm definitely should have died from that Call of the Haunted, but it does not matter because we can activate this Book of Eclipse, set all of our monsters, and then we can just flip them all up because we have not summoned them that turn, and so they were very dead anyway just by flipping the Morphing Jar. This next game we are up against fairies, and let's see how the mill deck does. This opening hand looks so funny because we have the Summoner Monk combo, but unfortunately they did not normal summon a monster, so there is no face-up monster on my opponent's side of the field, so we're just going to activate Upstart Goblin. We draw a Warm Worm, so we are going to normal summon that Warm Worm, thinking it is a Raikou. Attack in, we will take 200 damage, and then we are just going to set a back row and pass our turn. My opponent sets a back row and passes their turn, and then they are going to activate Trap Dust Shoot. If they did not have that Trap Dust Shoot, this play would have gone so hard because we could have milled a lot of cards. I think it would be 12 cards if we do the combo because we have the Warm Worm on the field, but unfortunately that is not the case, and so we are just going to switch this guy to defense and pass our turn. My opponent normal summons a Dimensional Alchemist. They banish the top card of their deck. Going to the battle phase, they will clear our Warm Worm and they will mill 3 cards, and then we will take this 1400 damage. I'm also deciding not to use this hand destruction because I don't really want to use it for no value. I need to get as much value out of my cards as possible, and so I'm trying to use it on, say, like extra normal summons or a Shield Worm I want to put in grave, these sorts of things. So we are just going to take this damage. They set a back row, and in the end phase we can bring back the Warm Worm and activate the Inferno Reckless Summon. This will summon out 2 more Warm Worms from the deck, and they decide to summon out another Dimensional Alchemist from the deck. This is very good with me. I love Inferno Reckless Summon. It just gives more cards to Book of Eclipse and gets more cards out of their deck. It is perfect for the mill strategy. We're going to activate Magic Planter on the Limit Reverse. We will draw 2 cards and our opponent will mill 3. That is like the most value a mill deck can really get, so I'm so happy. Okay, we're gonna activate Hand Destruction, sending 2 of these cards to the graveyard, and then we draw 2 a Magic Planter and a Dark Bribe. We are then just going to set a couple of cards and pass our turn. In the end phase, they are going to activate Call of the Haunted on Christia. That is completely fine with me. We have the Book of Eclipse if we ever need to special summon. They're going to activate Dimensional Alchemist, yet again attack over our Warm Worm. But we are going to activate Gravity Bind. They chain the Solemn Judgment, and we chain the Dark Bribe. They will draw a card, and we are feeling very good. It is a great feeling to get the Solemn Judgment out of the way in case they do get Heavy Storm in the future. They are going to draw a card from the Dark Bribe, and then they pass their turn. We draw the best card in our deck, the Morphing Jar. We are just going to set that, set a back row, and pass our turn. My opponent is going to activate Mind Control on the Morphing Jar. They're then going to compulse their own Christia and tribute some of the Christia using our Morphing Jar. Oh, wait. Oh shoot. You can't do that. Fairy player. You can't tribute What the heck? Why am I just realizing this? You can't do that. Okay, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. They're going to tribute summon this Christia illegally, I will say. And then they are just going to pass their turn. We draw a Wall of Revealing Light. We're going to set that and pass. My opponent is going to normal summon a Cyber Valley. Use it to banish itself and another monster in order to draw 2 more cards from their deck, and then they're just going to pass their turn. We are going to activate this Wall of Revealing Light, paying 1,000 life points, and this lets us use the Magic Planter, sending that card to draw 2 new cards. We draw 2 Hand Destruction. We're going to activate one of them. We draw a Needleworm and a Shieldworm, and Shieldworm is not that bad in this instance because we can normal summon it, and it will go to defense and potentially mill 3 cards because of our 2 Warm Worms, but they do have this Herald of Orange Light to negate and destroy that effect. We pass our turn. My opponent draws again. They're going to set another back row and pass. We draw a Magic Planter, but we're just going to set this Needleworm and pass. They are then going to pass their turn. We draw the Limit Reverse. We can flip up the Needleworm, mill 5 cards, set a back row, and pass our turn. We are feeling very good because we have this Book of Eclipse, so we are pretty much, guaranteed to win. And if they pass, we can just Book of Eclipse the field and then flip up the Needleworm on our turn again. Our last game, we are up against the Rock deck, and our hand looks so good. We're just going to set a back row and pass, and then we are just going to pass again. They're going to pass, and we draw a Needleworm. We finally set that and set a couple of cards and pass our turn. They're going to flip up this Hamster, and I foolishly Fiendish Chain the Hamster. I definitely should have saved it for the Caius. It would have been so good, and honestly, Raikou mills cards for us, so we probably should have definitely let them summon the Raikou. I mean, it's technically milling 4 cards because they're getting the Raikou out of the deck. Anyway, we will take 2,400, but thankfully this Fiendish Chain stays around on the field. We are then going to normal summon a Summoner Monk, discard a spell card to summon out a Shieldworm from the deck, and then we can activate Inferno Reckless Summon on the summon of the Shieldworm. This will summon out 2 more Shieldworms, and our opponent can summon out a Caius, and then the first Shieldworm will turn to defense, and then the other 2 will turn, and they will mill 9 cards. We're then going to set a back row and activate Card Destruction. I did look up the Edison format ruling, and you can do this as long as your opponent has cards in their hand, and then they are going to draw a bunch of cards, and then we are just going to pass our turn. They draw for turn, summon the Gaia Plate, go to the battle phase, and then we will activate this Wall of Revealing Light, paying 3,000 life points. They're then going to activate Call of the Haunted, but we do have the Dark Bribe for the Call of the Haunted. They're then going to set a couple of back row and pass their turn. We draw a Morphing Jar, which is very good for us. They're going to MST the Wall of Revealing Light, go into the battle phase, attack over the Summoner Monk, attack over a Shieldworm and another Shieldworm, and then we are just going to pass our turn. We draw a Book of Eclipse, which is perfect. We're then going to set that and flip the Morphing Jar. We draw 5 cards, and our opponent does the same. We activate Upstart Goblin. This gets another Upstart Goblin. We're going to activate that Upstart Goblin, and this will get a Warm Worm. We're then going to activate Hand Destruction, discarding 2 of our monsters, and we draw into 2 more cards. We're then going to set a couple of cards and pass our turn. They only have 6 cards left in deck, and they still decide to flip the Raikou. They flip the Raikou, and we can activate this Book of Eclipse. This will put all of our monsters face down, and then they will activate the Dark Calling. And this is very scary for us because this will kill us. It can switch the monsters to attack, and then flip effects are not activated, and so they're going to go into the battle phase. But thankfully for me, I still have the Fiendish Chain, the star card of this deck, and so that card's attack will go down to 0, and it cannot even attack in the first place. To be honest, I could not get a ton of games with this deck because most of the games I played, my opponents would leave after they saw the first mill card, which is understandable. I understand. But the games that I did play, I won about 70%, which is a lot more than I won with the dinosaur deck. So that's something to consider. This deck operates on such a funny access in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because you are playing an alt win condition. You are not trying to attack your opponent, and so a lot of the times, half of their deck does nothing. All of the bottomless, the Deep Prisons. All of these cards are pretty much useless against you, and you just get to operate in your fun alternate win condition in a very funny way because you are also doing silly combos at the same time. I think all of these additions have made this version of Mill leagues above the Verdant Sanctuary Acid Trap Hole version of Mill that I brought in the last episode. I love the fact that you have actual combos. You are trying to do Shieldworm, Needleworm shenanigans, and the fact that you can mill 15 cards at once is what this deck needed. You needed power plays. I don't like the version of Mill that's just protect the floodgate, and if it goes away, you die. And this version of Mill, you have plays to make. I'm surprised because it is relatively powerful. I'm going to put this deck in a powerful cardboard. I don't know. It's probably should be fun and cheesy, but I won so many games. And if you try it out, you will see the games that you can actually play, you have a good shot of winning. I wish I could build this deck in paper, but for some reason, Warm Worm is a tournament pack card that's like $15 each. And I'm so happy about the Magic Planter stuff. Outback and I sort of put these pieces together with that dinosaur deck. I don't know if people have done it before, but the Limit Reverse Magic Planter shenanigans, getting value out of the monster you summon back, just works so well in the Mill deck. And Book of Eclipse, Inferno Reckless Summon are such powerful cards. I love having a deck that actually uses them in an effective way. Maybe there is truly a brain worm inside of my head because every time I play this deck, it puts a big smile on my face. You know, I'm having a good time. It's a good day to be an Edison duelist when you are shield worming for 9 cards. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and yeah, I will see you in the next one.